Good evening, it's 8 p.m. here local time in Warsaw, and you're watching World News Tonight on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Coming up, the Polish government is pushing to separate the roles of Prosecutor General and Minister of Justice while addressing the status of so-called neo-judges. Now, framed as a key step towards restoring the rule of law, the move is set to face scrutiny from the Venice Commission, which will soon weigh in with its opinion. Now, more on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Poland will receive 67 billion zloty from the EU this year under the National Recovery Plan. The Pentagon reports that 600,000 Russians have been killed and wounded in Ukraine. This year's Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to a Japanese organization calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons. The debate over Poland's rule of law is heating up on the eve of a major opinion on the issue set to be made public by the Council of Europe's Venice Commission. Our Aaron Daman has more.
Inside Poland's halls of power, battle lines have been drawn over the government's efforts to restore the rule of law.
The most important problem in the Polish legal system is the overthrow in Poland, consisting of replacing the rule of law with the law of the Constitutional Tribunal. Today, we have blatant non-compliance with the law, violations of the Constitution, a prosecutor who is not the national prosecutor.
It comes as the Venice Commission, a key advisory body of the Council of Europe, prepares to release a formal opinion on the issue, with current Justice Minister Adam Bodnar keeping tight-lipped as he heads to Italy.
We'll see what happens tomorrow at the Venice Commission. I'm flying from Luxembourg directly to Venice and will attend the Commission meeting tomorrow. I do not want to speculate at this stage.
Front of mind for the Commission, whether or not the Civic Coalition's draft legislation to separate the functions of the Justice Minister and Prosecutor General is consistent with European law. It's also looked into ways to regulate so-called neo-judges. Before last year's general election, major concerns were raised over the influence of the Law and Justice Party on the judiciary and prosecutor's office.
Minister of Justice is a politician, yes, and his supervision over the prosecution should be very, very limited. Whereas currently, in the current situation, those two offices are linked. So this is the same person who is both Minister of Justice and Prosecutor General.
But the party itself continues to deny it did anything wrong, and President Andrzej Duda, who has links to Law and Justice, is defending how the judges were appointed.
Neither the executive nor the legislature, but also judges in the exercise of judicial power, should not question the validity and effectiveness of another judge's appointment or challenge another judge's independence based only on flimsy arguments from a completely different order, such as current political disputes.
The saga has previously provoked tensions between Brussels and Warsaw, though the coalition maintains it's patching the relationship up.
I think that the relations between Poland and Brussels are really very good. I believe that Brussels is aware of the limitations that the Polish government currently faces due to the lack of a president who wants to cooperate with us.
After a turbulent period in Polish politics, re-establishing and maintaining the rule of law is viewed by Brussels as a critical step forward, despite the protestations of the previous Law and Justice administration. How the current government aims to achieve that is becoming clearer by the day. In Warsaw for TVP World, I'm Aaron Daman.
Poland's Minister for Development Funds and Regional Policy provided an update on the country's National Recovery Plan. Now, the funds unlocked by Brussels 10 months ago total 67 billion zloty for 2024 and are designed to help Poland's energy and digital transition. Sasha Farbach reports.
Taking stock of what's been achieved, ever since key milestones over the last 10 months had been reached, Warsaw has begun to receive billions in key funds. Europe's Recovery and Resilience Facility is aimed at assisting EU nations after the pandemic and ensuring a resilient economy. However, the Polish government's share of the funds had been frozen due to a dispute between Brussels and the former Law and Justice government, with a key issue at stake.
Whether all conditions given by the Commission, the European Commission, are fulfilled or not. The main topic, main issue, was about the rule of law.
Relations with Brussels have since improved, and Poland has received billions in funds, which it has begun to allocate to various projects, including energy efficiency upgrades for 300,000 homes. One of the main focus areas is energy and wind turbines.
The biggest investment is the wind turbine farms in the Baltic Sea, which also entails a whole network of various other investments. Installation ports, service ports, transmission networks, distribution networks.
The funds will not only help Poland's green and digital transition, but are also seen by experts as a way to keep pace with other countries in Western Europe.
Energy transition, digital transformation. We also can think about education, and we also can think about some infrastructure. We still need to catch up our infrastructure with what we can see on the Western Europe.
Part of the funds will also be invested in areas that will help Poland during crises. An observation satellite will be launched next year to help with floods and fires, as Poland and the region have recently experienced climate disasters.
Today, climate issues and the need for protection against such disasters, including the construction of reservoirs and flood embankments, are very relevant.
Timing, however, is a factor, as only around 12 billion zloty have been actually spent, and due to the dispute between Warsaw and Brussels with the previous government, time was lost. With a deadline in 2026, much will need to still be done for Poland to make use of all of the large financial assistance provided by Brussels.
President Zelensky has wrapped up his European tour. Now, he's been to London, Paris, Rome, and Berlin, where he met with allies and also with Pope Francis. Now, we're moving live straight to Kyiv, where our correspondent Oz Chatterjee is located. Good evening, Oz. What has President Zelensky managed to accomplish, and what can you tell us about how his tour in general is being commented on?
Well, it remains to be seen what President Zelensky has accomplished with this diplomatic blitz over the last few days. Obviously this week would have come as a disappointment to Zelensky, because he was hoping to have the Ramstein contact group where he was supposed to meet with President Biden and the rest of the European allies to discuss this in more detail, to discuss his peace plans, to reveal his peace plans to all of them at the same time. However, this has not been the case. Biden pulled out because of the hurricane. Therefore, Zelensky has been tasked with trying to find an alternative way of presenting his plans. And he has visited 4 different countries in quick succession, meeting not only with the leaders of those countries, but also the Pope and the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte, where he has been discussing his victory plan and what he says, getting approval, getting the allies together to strengthen Ukraine's position and to bring about what he says is an effective second peace conference to end the war. That is a peace conference that Russia is expected to attend, or rather Kyiv wants Russia to attend. But the details in the public sphere of what actually that victory plan entails is still light. So it remains to be seen how the allies are going to react to this, whether they're going to fulfill what Zelensky's hoping for. But he's certainly been very, very busy over the last few days meeting with his partners.
Oz, I want to ask you about the situation on the front. Now, according to reports coming out from the Pentagon, Russian casualties in the war now stand at 600,000 soldiers. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so that number tallies with what other countries' intelligence agencies have been saying, with what the Ukrainians have been saying. Now, it should be stressed that this number is not 600,000 killed. This is 600,000 killed and wounded. And that number it's hard to differentiate between how many of those are wounded who will be able to return to the battlefield or not later down the line once they've had time to recover. However, still, these are staggering losses. Now, Russia is maintaining staggering losses, with the US also saying in that same statement, the Pentagon saying that September was the heaviest loss rate for Russians since the war began. So not only are they losing heavily men and machines, but they're also losing them more now than they were at the beginning of the war. Now, that's to be said that Russia is still making steady advances, slow but steady advances in the east of the country. That's causing great concern, great difficulty for the Ukrainian defenders here. However, it is sustaining huge losses. The question being, not just here in Kyiv, but in the Western capitals, just how long Russia can sustain these kinds of losses.
Thank you so much, Oz Chatterjee, for clarifying that for us. That's our correspondent, Oz Chatterjee, live from Kyiv in Ukraine. Stay safe. Presidents of 11 European countries gathered in Krakow on Friday for the Araiolo summit. Now, the informal group discussed the strengthening of transatlantic ties as Europe is bracing for the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Kazimierz Łysiak brings us the report from Krakow.
Polish kings used to rule here at the Wawel Royal Castle behind me in Krakow for centuries. But today, not kings but presidents of 11 European countries gathered for the unofficial Araiolo's Group summit to discuss the most pressing challenges that Europe is currently facing. These countries include, of course, Poland as the host, but also Germany, Italy, Estonia, Latvia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Hungary, and from the south of Europe, Bulgaria, Croatia and Greece. The main theme of the discussions was the strengthening of transatlantic ties, of course ahead of the upcoming US presidential elections in less than a month. But Polish President Andrzej Duda also took the summit as an opportunity to present the priorities that Poland will have as it takes over the presidency in the Council of the European Union in the first half of 2025.
Many times security issues have been raised. Many times issues of our joint support for Ukraine have been raised. The questions of how to act so that Ukraine not only survives this terrible Russian onslaught it is facing at the moment, but also how to act so that Ukraine can be accepted into the European Union as soon as possible, have been raised many times.
Among other topics discussed here by the presidents of these 11 countries was, of course, continued support for Ukraine in the face of the Russian invasion. EU enlargement was also a huge topic of discussions, defense spending, energy security. But interestingly, there was also a proposal from the Slovenian president to reform the United Nations, specifically the right to veto in the UN Security Council. According to the Slovenian president, the works of the United Nations is currently being sabotaged by one particular country.
As president of Slovenia, I also made the following proposal. If a country is discussed in the UN Security Council, it should not have the right to vote. In particular, it should not be able to vote on an issue concerning that country.
Other presidents, including the president of Latvia, shared this sentiment that the UN needs to be reformed, but it will be difficult, since it is one thing to want to reform the UN and another to actually do it with the right to veto still in place. To summarize, this summit was a good opportunity for the leaders of these European countries to come up with a common approach to the results of the US presidential elections in less than a month, and also for Poland to present its priorities in the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. From Krakow, TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
Hungary is not planning on cutting their imports of Russian gas anytime soon. Now, on the contrary, the country's foreign minister confirmed that Budapest is looking to increase Russian gas deliveries to Hungary via Russia's second largest gas company. Franciszek Pilis has the story.
Gas is one of the oldest and most popular energy sources to this day, and Russia has a lot of it. While exports of Russian gas have significantly lowered since Moscow's troops entered Ukraine on Putin's orders, some countries refuse to stop importing gas from Russia just because of ethics. One of those countries is Hungary, which doesn't like the prospect of sourcing its gas from other suppliers, despite many calls to do so from fellow EU members.
We have a common policy called Repower EU that aims at quitting Russian gas, Russian resources, in general until 2027. You have no sanctions for not following this policy, and you have Bratislava and Budapest leading a clearly pro-Russian climate and energy policy.
As a matter of fact, Budapest wants to increase their imports of Russian gas, confirmed by Hungarian Foreign Minister Petr Szijjártó and Russia's Gazprom. Given the volatile nature of the war in Ukraine and the fact that a 5-year deal between Kyiv and Moscow on Russian gas transit via Ukraine to Europe will expire on December 31st, Hungary has also started to look for alternative ways to have the resource transported. Enter Turkey, which imports its gas from Russia via the Turk Stream pipeline. If the gas is routed through that pipeline and then its connection with South Stream Light, it would end up in Hungary all the same.
Hungary is not going to be affected by the halt of the transit through Ukraine. It's Slovakia, Austria, and Moldova and partially Italy that will be affected by the Ukrainian gas transit halt, but everyone can deal with that. So it's very important to note not to sow any panic. There is enough gas in the region to replace all Russian gas flows.
So far, no concrete details besides the fact that Hungary's state-owned energy company MVM and Gazprom signed a memorandum of understanding have been revealed. However, it is safe to say that Russian gas will likely still be used in Europe for the foreseeable future.
What are the primary challenges ahead of the European maritime economy, and more specifically the shipbuilding industry? These were the main questions that officials and experts tried to answer at the economy conference in Gdynia. Our Marek Steele reports.
The maritime economy of the European Union has been rapidly growing in recent years. This is true about European ports, but also Polish ports because of their economic and military meaning. Lots of military equipment which arrives in Poland and is destined for Ukraine, but also for Poland, arrives through these very ports. So Gdynia is seeing huge infrastructure projects be implemented. This is true about a huge rail hub which has just been completed here in the city of Gdynia. But there are also other infrastructure projects planned here. So an external port which is planned to be built on the Baltic Sea, and a road link which is called the Red Road, which will connect this external port with the national road system.
The railway station has been just finished. It's extremely modern. It's ready to accept long trains. It's really up to what is now needed. But we're still lacking a rail line, which is not an investment made directly by the authority of port, but by the state. And we are also lacking so-called Red Road. Red Road is also to be built by the state. I would say it is one of the most important investments that are to be made in Poland.
Experts gathered here today at the Maritime Economy Forum in Gdynia debated on how to revive the shipbuilding industry across the European Union. In the 1980s, Europe accounted for 45% of global shipbuilding. Today it is at 6%, so there's a huge crisis in this industry of the maritime economy. And this also poses a security threat for the European Union and its members, because most of these ships are constructed in China. So hopes are high that the European Commission, the new European Commission, which will soon take power in the EU, will take some steps to allow this very sector develop further. Marek Steele, TVP World.
Rescue efforts are underway after a deadly hurricane cut a destructive path across Florida, causing floods, toppling cranes, and tearing the roof off a stadium. Now, the number of people killed is rising, but officials say the worst-case scenario has been avoided. Let's now go live to Alex Sumlinsky, who is in Lakeland, Florida. Hello, Alex. What are the latest developments there on your end?
Good evening, Diana. Well, as of now, we have 16 people confirmed dead because of the impact of this hurricane. Some 2.4 million people are still without power, and insurers are saying that the damages caused by Hurricane Milton will amount to some $60 billion. Now, behind me, you can see a tree which has been toppled over. Keep in mind that the winds, the strength of the winds when this slammed here were 100 miles per hour. Now, residents of Lakewood are returning. They are starting to clean up. I also would like to show you a picture from a local paper, which is right here. And now, as you can see, the title is, it is pretty well, it says Milton's Misery, because besides these huge trees that came down, but also power lines, we do know that one of those 16 casualties was a man who, while cleaning up, unfortunately stepped on a downed cable and was killed. So these are very serious, very serious issues that people are dealing here with: flooding, downed cables, and trees. Now, when it comes to Lakewood, people here already are coming back. They are cleaning up as well as cooking meals for each other as they continue to get their lives in order after this hurricane. However, if someone is without power, it may take up to 7 days for them to get that power back. But it does look like the worst is over, and now it's time to clean up and, well, get back to normal. Back to you, Diana.
Thank you so much, Alex, and stay safe in Florida. They survived the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and devoted their lives to convince people to a world without nuclear weapons. Now, the Nobel Peace Prize of the Year was awarded to the Japanese organization Nihon Hidankyo. Bogumil Radajewski from TVP Nauka has more.
We must maintain the nuclear taboo, an international norm stigmatizing the use of nuclear weapons as morally unacceptable no matter the situation. That's a message from the Norwegian Nobel Committee, with this year's Nobel Peace Prize going to Nihon Hidankyo, a Japanese organization that focuses on demonstrating through testimonies of atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki that nuclear weapons must never be used again. The experts see this decision as a commentary from the Committee for Ongoing Armed Conflicts. First of all, the war in Ukraine, with recurring threats coming from Russia, talking about the possibility of using atomic weapons in this war, but also about the situation in the Middle East, with a conflict involving, on one hand, Israel, a country that has nuclear weapons, and on the other hand, Iran, which for many years has been trying to obtain its own nuclear arsenal. A nuclear war could destroy our civilization, says the Nobel Committee with this year's Nobel Peace Prize. Oslo, Bogumil Radajewski.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has concluded his European tour. Now, the Ukrainian leader visited London, Paris, Berlin, and Rome to garner further military and financial assistance for his country. He also met with Pope Francis at a private audience held in the Vatican. Now, joining me now to discuss the latest developments in Ukraine and more is Kira Rudik, Ukrainian MP, Voice Party leader. Ms. Kira, thank you so much for being with us here on World News Tonight on TVP World.
Hello, Diana, and thank you so much for having me.
Let's begin first with President Zelensky's European diplomatic tour. Now, it has now concluded. What can you say that Zelensky has achieved overall from this trip?
Well, Diana, I have a hope that the achievement that we expect the most, the agreement to use Western weapons to hit into the military targets in Russian territory, that this will not be announced, that we will see that decision on the battlefield. And we desperately need it because the winter is coming and the majority of our energy system has been destroyed. Second point is President is gathering the support of Ukraine in terms of developing our military complex and, of course, getting the humanitarian support. All the items that the Western leaders have been asked, they are not new. This is something that we have been asking for over and over and over. And what we basically need right now in terms of the weapon supplies, we need all the promises that have been made to finally become weapons in the hands of Ukrainian soldiers. And though I think it was on President's agenda, it's still very hard to get through the bureaucratic and logistical issues to get all that we need in time. And for us in Ukraine, for every single day of the delay, we pay with the lives of our people. And this is an incredibly painful matter.
Ms. Rudik, you're mentioning a lot of really, really important and, of course, interesting points there. But now let me ask you this. I mean, President Zelensky has mentioned for months, asking permission to use the U.S.-manufactured long-range weapons against targets in Russia. But Michael Carpenter, who had an interview here on TVP World, he's a senior U.S. diplomat, he said that what Ukraine really needs right now is to actually mobilize additional men to go on the front lines, that it needs new training, it needs new brigades, and badly needs those air defense systems. Now, how would you say, how available are these men in Ukraine, and are defense systems being supplied quickly enough?
So I will start with the respect to Mr. Carpenter and all the things that have been done to get us what is necessary for us. However, during the war, I can tell you, there is not a thing that is a Wunderwaffe or something that will definitely change the course of the war. We need everything. Do we need more people? Yes, of course. Do we need them to go through the training faster? Absolutely. Do we need more defense systems? Yes. Do we need more fighter jets and Patriot missile systems? Yes, it's not that there is something that is less important. All the items are supporting each other. And I think you would agree that our military commandment was brilliant throughout those 2.5 years, being able to achieve that we are alive and fighting with the limited resources that we had. So, of course, there are things that needs to be done faster and better. And from our side as well, we understand this. But the question is, if we gather more men into the new brigades and train them, would they have weapons to fight with? Would those weapons arrive in time? And who can promise 100% that our people would not be fighting enemy empty-handed? So it's a very complicated matter, and what we need to achieve right now is to make sure that all the pieces of this puzzle are working together and being delivered in time.
Ms. Rudik, what do we know about the Ramstein summit that has been postponed? Any more details coming out of that?
Well, we hope that the new dates will be established ASAP. This Ramstein summit is very important because it includes world leaders. So not only the representatives of the ministries of defense, but actually leaders who can make political decisions. As you know, in weapons supplies, it's not only a political will that is necessary, and it's not only the military agreement that are necessary. We usually need both. An ability to have political and military leaders in one room, deliver the messages, show them the peace plan of President Zelensky and peace formula, and then move ahead with the decisions is very critical for us. Unfortunately, the summit was postponed, but we really hope that it will be resumed and we will be able to deliver a message. We have proven that Russia is not invincible. We are able to fight them back. They are only good in terrorizing us, but they are not good even in defending their own territory. So we can win this war. We just need an ability and means to do that. And we will show you. We already showed you with the facts that we can do it. Right now, let us do our job and finish it.
Ms. Rudik, you just said we can win this war. I mean, the international community does support Ukraine. However, let's go. I mean, this Ramstein summit was supposed to happen as one of the possible final meetings between the U.S. President Joe Biden and Zelensky. But now what happens if Donald Trump wins these elections? I mean, he said that he would be able to win this war, to stop this war in 24 hours.
Well, I think the bigger issue is that there are people who are offering simple solutions to the complicated problems. And I think what we will see in future that there is a big difference between being a candidate to the president of the United States and then being a leader of the free world and being able to defend the values and the democracies that are standing for those values. And I think it's very dangerous to be promising to shake hands to Putin and to figure something out with him. And again, it's not just me telling you this. Look at the facts. We had those hopes in 2014 when we had this freezing of the conflict, and look where it got us. Georgia had a similar way, and it led them nowhere, because one thing that is not resolved by this moment is that there is not a person or an organization in the whole world that can make sure that Putin will...
And just very briefly, sir, because we're almost out of time, are there any, just really briefly, details that you can give us about President Zelensky's peace plan, victory plan? Just very briefly, because we're almost out of time.
The peace plan is not something new. It includes getting us the weapons that are necessary for us and getting us the ability to hit Russian targets inside their territory. They are critical. These pieces are absolutely necessary to move forward. But President has not announced the major details of the plans yet. We only know of what we have been able to receive from our partners.
Thank you so much, Kira Rudik, Ukrainian MP, a Voice Party leader, for being with us here on World News Tonight on TVP World. Thank you so much. And that's all for this edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching.